Hey everybody, Josh from Dicus Enterprises here, and today we're going to take a quick look at some common issues we see with what we call prefabbed or prefabricated rails. Prefabbed rails look pretty similar to what we have here on the layout table, and we're going to take a closer look at it in a minute. Typically, these are rails that you can get from places like Home Depot, Lowe's, different types of hardware stores, some local metal suppliers. I know there's a few in Baltimore that sell these in pre-made lengths, and people buy them because they're cheap. And they're cheap for a reason. They're cheap because they are made cheaply. They are poorly made. They're not made to stand up over time. You are much, much better off actually investing the money into a high-quality, hand-built, hand-fabricated step or wall railing, as opposed to doing one of these as a quick, easy solution. And we're going to take a look at a couple of the common issues that we see with these prefabbed rails. I'm going to explain to you why these things are a terrible idea. Alright, let's take a little bit of a closer look. This is a pretty simple, straightforward step rail that we just removed from a client's house, I'd say about 3 or 4 days ago. And this is New Year's week. Happy New Year's, everybody. It's finally 2021. 2020 is finally over with. So we had a couple days off. That's why we're just now getting to this rail build. And the idea, we're just going to replicate this rail as close as possible while actually making it a quality rail. Now, some of the issues that we see pretty commonly with these prefabbed rails, they rot out very quickly. As you can see, we have a lot of rust going on here. Let's walk down. Got some vines growing on it from a bush that was next to the step area. You can see all kinds of rust, and it just gets worse as we come down. Now, we did not put this tape here. This tape's been here quite a while, as you can see from how it's weathered. And that was a repair that someone did. All the rust inside the bottom. And the second main post, you can see all kinds of rust. That's pretty common with these. The paint jobs are a little lackluster. They don't hold up. The materials are super, super thin. That's the next thing. So if you take a look at these spiral or twist pickets, that's some pretty thin material. It's 1/8 of an inch, which for something like this isn't very thick. If you watch, and this is firmly attached at the top and at the bottom, and that's how much you can bend it just with one hand. That's not sturdy. I don't like these. We don't use them. The actual top and bottom channels, same thing, 1/8 of an inch, super thin, very easy to bend. The main tubes, not that you can really tell because of all the rust damage, but these are only 1/16 inch. Which is part of the reason why they rust out so quickly. And the same thing up here, very flexy, bendy pickets, the same material, same thing on this post up here. I do not like it. It's not heavy duty. If someone, God forbid, were to be actually falling into this rail, especially if it's a tall or a larger individual, this rail may not support their weight from them falling. It might be fine if you're just walking up a set of steps using it as a handhold, but if someone's actually falling into it, this rail is going to collapse. It's going to break. It's going to have issues. I've seen it happen before. Another thing I don't like about these is the way they are put together. Now, if we come down here, it's kind of hard to see, especially because of how dirty it is, but these are just popped into a little hole, and it just has a little tack weld on it. That's it. The connections here, they do weld them, and then they buff them completely smooth, and It's a poor quality weld to begin with, poor fit up, poor quality weld. And then they buff it smooth, and then over time, from people actually using these rails, applying weight to them, leaning on them, using them to actually brace themselves as they walk up the steps, it causes a lot of flex because of how thin all this material here is. It doesn't give it much structural integrity. It causes a lot of flex, and then these factory welds start to crack. You can see them cracking here. That one has just barely started. This one up here has been repaired once already, and a terrible repair at that. We did not do that. You can see that one's cracking pretty badly there. That one's just starting to crack there. That's a hazard if someone were to fall into it and these welds were to break and this section of rail were to fall off, especially in the condition it was in, because this post wasn't being held on by anything but duct tape, and this one only had that little bit right here, that one side that was fully attached. The rest of this was already rotted out and broken. So it's not very safe construction-wise. If you look, most of everything is bolted together because they know at some point those welds are going to crack and fail because they're poor quality welds, it's thin material, and all of these flex a lot. So they're bolted together at all the unions. That's not repair work, that's how they come brand new. And A, it looks like garbage, and B, doesn't work. So, coming over here, this is where it was attached to the brick wall. They had 2 tabs. They drilled a hole into the brick wall and put in 2 PVC sleeves with some type of putty fill, it almost looked like. Let that dry and then anchored these into it. It didn't work because these 2 were loose as anything on the wall, and you know, I had to cut them because I couldn't get to these to actually get them out on the top and bottom. However, you see the bottom one's intact because it just pulled out. I had to cut the top one, the bottom one just came right out like cake. These don't hold up well. On an older home, I don't like to mount the brick on the walls, especially. You don't know how old the brick is, you don't know the quality of the brick, you don't know the quality of the mortar. It's starting to age. I prefer not to anchor into that if possible. The new rail that we're going to build is actually going to be a 3-post. It'll have those 2 posts there, and then right where this last picket is going to be a new post. And that's going to come all the way down to a pad, and it's going to get mounted to the actual concrete landing. It's going to be a lot more sturdy, a lot safer. And it's not going to be attached to the face of the house. So these are some of the common issues we see with these rails. We replace prefab rails and repair them quite frequently. We prefer to replace over repair because if you repair them, it's only a matter of time before something else on it's going to break, plain and simple. So we always suggest to replace if possible. And it's a better investment to save your money from the beginning and buy a high quality hand fabricated rail like what we offer. And I'm going to take a minute here and I'm going to pull out some material and I'm going to show you the differences between some of the material that they use versus the material that we use to give you a little bit of a better idea of difference in quality. So, we talked about how thin the material they use for their pickets are and how easily flexible they are, and that I don't like them. And we do not use this type of picket material whatsoever. We use one of 2 types. I only got one out here with me right now, and that is our more common 1/2-inch solid square picket. So as you can see, this is solid steel. There's no hole in it. It's not 1/8 of an inch thin. You cannot bend it. You're not going to flex it. It's not going to happen. And that provides a lot of vertical strength on this rail. It allows someone who's bracing on it, leaning on it, or God forbid falling into it to, put their weight into it. And the rail's not going to flex nearly as much as it will with these pickets right here. You can already see just by looking at these 2 from me squeezing them and flexing them, how they've warped and bowed. You can see the this from here to here is a different gapping than it is from over here. That's just from sitting here going like this, demonstrating to you guys. You can't do that with these solid 1/2-inch pickets. The other style we have is still a solid 1/2-inch picket, except it's got a twist to it a lot more like what this is here. So if someone wanted to match this, we could still do it with a thicker material. It is a little more expensive though. Now, our main tubes, our actual posts, we don't like to use the 1.5 or 1.25 wide material. It's a little too large, bulky, it doesn't look as nice. We use 1x1 with a 1/8-inch thick wall. Nice, thick, heavy-duty wall on that tube. Compared to this tube here, which you can see down in here, that's what's left. It's only about a 1/16 of an inch thick, maybe 3/32. And that rusts and rots out very quickly. Now, we do take extra precautions to avoid these rusting and rotting, and I'm not going to give any of our trade secrets away as to what we do. However, there's a lot of things we do to these main posts that are not done on these rails here and these posts here. That's going to prevent them from actually rusting out like this. And you'll notice on their designs, you got open holes all throughout your main posts, which isn't good. That allows moisture and water, and that's another reason I don't like bolting them together too, because that's somewhere where moisture and water can get to the inside of a rail to rot the rail out. And this is our top cap. This is actually the handrail portion, which you put your hand on the top, which on this rail, the top and the bottom material, they're the same. It's the same cap. They're designed the same. And they're cheap, they're thin. Look at the material thickness, super thin. Look at that material thickness, nice and thick, good quality. It's got a little surface rust on it because these are just some drop pieces I've had laying around the shop, and it rained the past few days, got a little moisture in here. But good quality, heavy duty steel. That's what we use for our top caps. Our bottoms are going to be 1/2-inch channel, 1/8-inch thick. So it's still thicker than this here. Much better quality, much better quality. And our paint, we use better quality paint as well. If you take a look at these here, you'll notice we go from rust straight over to paint. And if you start flicking and pulling at this paint here, you'll notice it's just black paint. There's no form of a primer or a sealer or anything on that metal between the metal and the paint. That's another thing we do not do. We do not paint directly to metal. We will use a primer sealer on all of our bare metal first and allow it to fully cure before applying our paint, and it adds another level of protection. We offer a 1-year limited warranty on our paint jobs because of that. We don't, in the first year, you should have no issues at all. You shouldn't have any issues at all with one of our paint jobs for 5 to 10 years before you need to start touching it up. Unless you live in a area where the climate is very, very terrible, or if you have a lot of trees around, you get a lot of sap and things like that. Areas like that, you got to clean and maintain your rails a little bit more. But in a normal suburb area, in the city, anything like that, these rails, the paint jobs we do on them, you shouldn't have any issues with them for 5 to 10 years as long as you maintain them well. This rail here, I don't know its exact age. However, from what we gather, it's probably only about 4, maybe 5 years old. And that's not good condition after that long. Even if this was a 10-year-old rail, it's terrible condition. So we're not a big fan of these. We don't suggest you go out and buy them. If you can afford to, have one custom fabricated. If a picket rail is a little bit too expensive for you, there's another style of rail out there which we call a 2-post or 3-post top cap rail, which is basically the same layout minus your bottom bar and your picket bars. So it's your main posts and your top cap, and that's it. Now for this setup here, it wouldn't work because this is going up 3 or 4 steps, and the landing is taller than 3 foot, so it does require a safety rail like this to keep anyone from falling off and walking off. However, if you were only doing a small step rail for 2 or 3 steps, then we do those quite frequently as 2-post top cap rails. They look very clean and very elegant on the front of homes. They're cheaper because there's not as much material, there's not as much time, there's not as many consumables, the installation doesn't take as long, so they look very, very good. And if you want to see pictures of either regular picket rails like this or 2-post top cap or 3-post top cap rails, feel free to check out our Instagram page, Dicus_Enterprises, or head on over to our Facebook page, Dicus Enterprises LLC. I'll also try to put in a couple of pictures of a few that we've done in 2020 at the end of this video. That way you guys kind of have an idea of what we're talking about. But we are a firm believer in quality products, handmade quality products at that, and we don't want to put out rails that are going to be rusting and falling apart in a matter of a couple of years. That's why you should deal with local small businesses. Don't go to the large corporations. They're not worried about whether or not your rail is going to be intact in 5 years. All they worry about is getting your money. They have so much business, they're not worried if one individual who owns a home is a little upset about the quality of the railing that they bought 5 years ago. Small businesses, owner-operators like myself, on the other hand, we are. My welds are guaranteed on my rails for life. Now granted, it is a limited warranty. If someone drives a car through your front yard and plows into the rail, I'm sorry, but I don't cover that under my warranty. You'll have to talk to the insurance company of the drunk idiot that ran through your yard. And yes, I have done repair work for clients who have had their rails or fences or gates driven through by drunk idiots. To date, I believe I've done 3, maybe 4 repairs like that just for my own company. Not to mention several repairs like that when I worked for other people's businesses. So don't drink and drive. Well, I decided that it'd be a good idea, since we looked at the prefabbed rail and talked about all the stuff that I hate about them and why they're garbage, that we take a look at the rail that we fabricated to replace that prefabbed rail and talk about some of those upgrades that we already mentioned and actually show you what it looks like. So, this is the rail. I just got done fabricating it. It's still hot. Now, it's not complete. These bars are just on here for line up to mock some things up and to check some measurements. Same thing with this bar here and this bar here. They're just sat in place at the moment, and we don't have the top cap cut and bent into place yet. The top cap's going to get cut and bent today, probably here. It's definitely going to get cut today. I don't know if I'm going to bend it here or bend it on site. I'm thinking I'm going to bend it on site after I've already gotten the posts on and the pickets attached. I'll go ahead and weld the top cap on, heat it, and then put the bend on it and do all that right on site. I think that's going to be probably the easiest way to do this one just because of positioning. But I did want to check it out and make sure everything lined up. It's a little easier for us. Currently, I don't have a dedicated work truck. I'm still working on saving money up to buy one and build a weld bed. So at the moment, I am using my personal 2500 for a lot of the work that we do. And it's just a little bit easier if I take the rail out in sections, to get it in and out of the truck. I will have a ex-student of mine and a high school friend of mine who just opened his own small business doing home improvements going with me tomorrow both of which who just kind of want to learn a little bit more about railings. My ex-student, because he does this type of work, and then my buddy, because he does wood and vinyl rails, and sometimes they ask for metal. He just kind of wants to see how I install them and what to look out for. That way he can kind of be a little bit more educated about them when he talks to the clients and when he talks with me about them. That way, hopefully we can help each other out and get each other some work. Because I don't do wood and vinyl. I pass all that along to him. He doesn't do metal. He passes that all along to me. So it works out well. Now let's start taking a look at a few things. We already showed you main posts once before. We use the thicker ones. It's a 1 inch by 1 inch square tube with an 1/8 inch wall. That is what we stick to. And these are the 1/2 inch solid pickets in place. Now, same test as before. I can move it maybe a 1/16 of an inch, and I'm squeezing as hard as I can on those two. It's not like the cheap and flimsy ones that I showed you earlier on the rail that this is replacing. Not only does that make this rail less of a hazard, it prevents the rail from flexing and wiggling side to side as well as up and down. That way, if someone's actually putting pressure on it from above, whether they're falling into it or bracing themselves on it or leaning on it, it's actually doing its job. It's holding and supporting the weight. They are welded both on the bottom and on the tops. We do MIG weld those. If it's an interior railing, we will TIG weld them, just to keep things a little neater and cleaner. On outdoor rails, though, we do MIG weld everything. And you can see our bottom pre-punch channel here, a lot thicker. We use 1/8 of an inch by 1 inch wide. Same thing coming over. Now, the gapping, because it's at a degree on this is a little smaller of a gap than that, and that's pretty normal on these rails. There's nothing you can do about that, but even on the smaller one where I can get a better grip on it, I'm squeezing as hard as I can on this. I can move it barely, maybe a 32nd compared to the 1/4 of an inch plus I can move the other one. Once again, weld it tops and bottoms on these. So it's much, much better quality, much better material, and it's definitely going to outlast that prefabbed rail. As I spoke about earlier, we're not mounting this end of the rail to the building or to the face of the house anymore in the brick. We don't want to do that since the rail's going in the same location. There's already 2 damaged holes there. We don't want to try to re-anchor to those. So we cut the rail just a little shorter than what the last one was, run it down to a post that'll go to a pad, and that'll be anchored in the concrete. And we just use sleeve anchors. Depending upon the depth of the concrete will depend upon the depth of the sleeve anchor. We never go below, I believe it's either 2.5 or 2 3/4 on these is what we don't go below. And they work out really well. I'm not a big fan of, I don't have any to show you because we never use them, but the old ones, or the old rail, had a big old cast aluminum mount at the bottom of it, and they collect a lot of moisture and water, and that starts to rot them out pretty quickly as well. So we don't like to do those. Now this rail is cooling down. After it's completely cooled down, it'll get shot or cleaned up first, and then shot in some primer sealer. This rail is going out on a job tomorrow. It will be assembled on site, so we are going to leave it in pieces like this, and then after it's all been assembled, it'll be touched up and painted on site as well. So we're looking forward to getting this one done. I will post a couple of pictures of the finished rail installed at the end of the video. I'm not going to take any video on their property. It is a client. Obviously, since they're doing business with me, they've consented to rails and both on property and off property being photographed and videoed. However, I didn't really talk to them about doing any videotaping on the property, and they're a little older and not in the best of health, so I don't want to trouble them with something like that. So I'll just take some pictures and add them to the end of the video here. And like always, if you have any questions, comments, leave them below the video. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. And also, we are located in Maryland. We service all of Maryland and DC. So if you do have any weld or fabrication work that you're looking to get done and you do want to get in contact with us, feel free to check out our website, www.dicusenterprises.com, our Facebook page, Dicus Enterprises LLC, our Instagram page, Dicus_Enterprises, and we also are on Yelp if you'd like to look up any of our 5-star reviews on there. So, until next time, we will see you all later.